What happens when prejudice meets power? You're about to find out. This isn't just a story about a mistaken identity. It's about a multi-million-dollar corporation, a brilliant black CEO in disguise, and an office culture so toxic it had to be destroyed. We follow Dr. Evelyn Reed, a woman who built an empire from scratch, as she walks into her newest acquisition, hoping to find talent and innovation. Instead, she's met with sneering condescension and is told to wait outside like a delivery driver. But her critics have no idea who they're talking to. And in 5 minutes, their world is going to come crashing down in the most epic firing you've ever heard of. Stay tuned, because the karma in this story is just getting started. The Tuesday morning air in Boston's Seaport District was crisp, carrying the faint, briny scent of the Atlantic. It was the kind of day that venture capitalists dream of, clear and full of promise. But inside the polished glass lobby of Innovate Forward, the atmosphere was stagnant. The air, recycled and chilled to a precise 68 degrees, felt as sterile as the minimalist furniture. Cheap, abstract art that screamed, "corporate approved," adorned the walls, its vibrant colors doing little to liven up the muted grays and beiges of the space. Dr. Evelyn Reed stood near the entrance, taking it all in. To anyone who bothered to look, she was just another woman in the city. She wore dark, well-fitted jeans, a simple but elegant gray cashmere sweater, and comfortable yet stylish leather flats. Her hair was pulled back in a neat, intricate braid that cascaded down her back. The only hint of luxury was the understated but clearly expensive watch on her wrist. A Patek Philippe she'd bought herself after Ethereum Dynamics, her company, had its first billion-dollar valuation. Today she was a ghost, an anonymous observer in her own new domain. Just 3 weeks prior, Ethereum Dynamics, a titan in AI-driven logistics and supply chain management, had completed its acquisition of Innovate Forward for a cool $280 million. Ethereum was Evelyn's baby, born from her doctoral thesis at Stanford and nurtured into a global powerhouse through sheer intellect, relentless drive, and an uncanny ability to see 5 steps ahead of everyone else. Innovate Forward was a legacy player, a company that had once been a pioneer in inventory management software, but had grown complacent, its arteries clogged with bureaucracy and an old boys club culture. The acquisition was Evelyn's idea. Buried under layers of corporate bloat, Innovate Forward had a few key patents and a foundational software architecture that with Ethereum's AI could be revolutionary. But her due diligence team had flagged something concerning: reports of a toxic, insular culture, particularly within its core development team in the Boston office. Productivity was stagnating, and employee turnover in junior positions was alarmingly high. So Evelyn decided to see it for herself. She hadn't sent a memo or scheduled a Meet the New CEO town hall. Instead, she'd booked a flight under her maiden name, rented a modest sedan, and walked in unannounced. She wanted to feel the place, to see the unvarnished reality of the company she now owned. She believed that a company's soul wasn't in its mission statement. It was in the way the receptionist answered the phone, the way colleagues spoke to each other when they thought no one of importance was listening. She approached the large, imposing reception desk. A woman with severely bleached blonde hair, probably in her late 40s, sat behind it, scrolling intently through her phone. She didn't look up. Her nameplate read Brenda. "Excuse me," Evelyn said, her voice polite and even. Brenda's eyes flickered up, annoyed at the interruption. They scanned Evelyn from head to toe in a fraction of a second, a dismissive appraisal that took in the jeans, the flats, the simple sweater, and the color of her skin. The judgment was instantaneous and palpable. "Deliveries are around the back," Brenda said, her voice flat, already looking back down at her phone. Evelyn felt a familiar, weary pang. It was a sensation she'd known her whole life, from being the only black girl in her advanced physics class to the only black woman on most corporate boards she'd ever sat on. It was the sting of being underestimated, of being categorized and dismissed before she'd even spoken a full sentence. "I'm not here for a delivery," Evelyn replied, keeping her tone perfectly neutral. "I have a meeting with the development team. I was told to come by this morning." It wasn't a lie. She had, in fact, told herself to come by. This time, Brenda sighed dramatically, placing her phone face down on the desk with a clack of her long acrylic nails. A meeting with who? Richard Peterson? That's the team lead, yes, Evelyn said. Brenda's eyes narrowed with suspicion. He didn't mention any meetings, and he doesn't just meet with anyone. Do you have an appointment? The subtext was thick enough to choke on. You don't look like you belong here. You don't look like someone Richard Peterson would meet. I believe he's expecting me, Evelyn maintained, her patience a carefully constructed dam holding back a flood of frustration. She could have ended this charade in an instant. A single flash of her true ID, a single phone call, and this woman would be stammering apologies. But that would defeat the entire purpose of her visit. She was here for the truth, and the truth, it seemed, was beginning to reveal its ugly face. Brenda huffed. Fine, I'll call him. What's your name? Evelyn. She offered only her first name. Brenda picked up her desk phone and jabbed a button. Rick, yeah, it's Brenda. There's an Evelyn here to see you. Says she has a meeting with the dev team. No, she doesn't look like a client. I don't know, some kind of courier? Maybe a candidate for the junior position? Okay, I'll tell her. She hung up the phone, a smug little smile playing on her lips. It was the smile of someone who felt they had successfully gatekept their little kingdom. Okay, Evelyn, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Rick is in a very important sprint planning session right now. He said he doesn't have time for unscheduled drop-ins. He said you can wait, but it'll be a while. Before Evelyn could respond, a side door opened, and a man strode out, laughing loudly with two other men who followed him. He was in his early 50s, with a florid complexion and a self-satisfied air. His suit was expensive but strained slightly at the midsection. This had to be Richard Peterson. He glanced over at the reception desk, his eyes sweeping past Evelyn as if she were a piece of furniture and landing on Brenda. Is that her? He asked, hooking a thumb in Evelyn's direction without making eye contact. Yes, Mr. Peterson, Brenda said, her tone now sycophantic. She says you're expecting her. Rick finally turned his gaze to Evelyn. It was the same dismissive scan she'd received from Brenda, but amplified with a dose of male arrogance. Look, I don't know who you are, but my team is in the middle of a critical session. We're mapping out the next quarter. We have a new parent company, Ethereum Dynamics, breathing down our necks, so we don't have time for this. He waved a hand vaguely in her direction. I was told my input would be valuable to the team, Evelyn said, her voice betraying no emotion. She was no longer just an observer. She was a scientist studying a specimen, and this specimen was proving every negative report to be an understatement. Rick let out a short, incredulous laugh. His two companions snickered behind him. Your input on our Q4 architecture roadmap? Sweetheart, what are you? The new coffee delivery service. Did they hire you to bring us snacks? The insult hung in the air, sharp and foul. The two men behind him laughed more openly now. Brenda smirked. In that moment, Evelyn saw it all. The corrosive culture, the casual bigotry, the self-importance that had led this once innovative company to the brink of irrelevance. This wasn't just a single-root employee. This was a sickness that had infected the entire organism. Her decision began to crystallize, shifting from observation to action. The ghost in the machine was about to become the god. Rick, mistaking her silence for intimidation, pressed his advantage. He took a step closer, puffing out his chest. Look, whatever it is you're selling, we're not interested. If you're here for an interview for that diversity hire spot in QA, you're late, and frankly, you're not dressed for it. He then delivered the line that would seal his fate and the fate of his entire team. He turned to Brenda, as if Evelyn wasn't even there anymore. Brenda, find her a chair or something, but not here. The lobby is for clients. Tell her to wait outside, maybe by the service elevators. We'll get to her when we get to her. He turned, ready to walk back to his critical meeting, a king in his crumbling castle. He had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life. Evelyn's voice, now laced with an edge of pure, cold steel, cut through the air. I don't think so, Richard. The use of his full first name stopped him in his tracks. There was a sudden authority in her voice that hadn't been there before. He turned back slowly, a flicker of confusion on his face. Excuse me? He asked. Evelyn took a step forward, her entire demeanor shifting. The quiet observer was gone. In her place stood the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The air around her seemed to crackle with an energy that Brenda, Rick, and his cronies had never encountered before. "I said, I don't think so," she repeated, her gaze unflinching. "You're right about one thing. This is a critical session, and you've all just provided me with the most valuable data point of the day." She pulled out her phone. "You have 5 minutes to enjoy your kingdom. I suggest you make them count." Richard Peterson stared at Evelyn, his mind struggling to process the sudden shift in tone. The condescending smirk on his face faltered, replaced by a deep-set frown of confusion and irritation. Who did this woman think she was? Her clothes were casual. Her demeanor, until a moment ago, was unassuming. He was Richard Peterson, Senior Vice President of Product Development, a man who had been with Innovate Forward for 22 years. He'd survived 3 different CEOs and 2 buyouts. He was untouchable. "Listen, lady," he began, his voice taking on a bullying edge. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're about 5 seconds from being escorted out of this building by security." His 2 colleagues, a lanky man named Mark and a stockier one named Steve, shifted uncomfortably behind him. They were seasoned sycophants, always ready to laugh at Rick's jokes. But this felt different. The woman's confidence was unnerving. Brenda, from behind her desk, watched with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. Evelyn ignored Rick completely. Her focus was on her phone. Her thumbs moved with practiced speed, tapping out a message. A quiet swoosh sound indicated it had been sent. Then she looked up, her gaze sweeping over the 3 men. "Mark Calloway and Stephen Pierce, right?" she said, her voice calm and measured. The 2 men flinched, surprised she knew their names. "Your latest performance reports laud your loyalty to Mr. Peterson. Commendable, in a futile sort of way. Less commendable is the fact that your team's primary project, Odyssey, is 6 months behind schedule and $1.2 million over budget. Yet I see you all had time for a 10-minute coffee run to laugh about the new intern's stutter. I saw the Slack messages." Mark's face went pale. Steve looked like he was going to be sick. They exchanged a panicked glance. How could she possibly know that? The internal audit from Ethereum hadn't even officially begun. Rick's bluster returned, a desperate defense mechanism. "That's confidential company information? Who the hell are you? Did Ethereum send you? Are you from HR?" The idea that she was a corporate spy from the new parent company began to dawn on him, and with it, a sliver of genuine fear. He had doctored the Odyssey progress reports himself. "Something like that," Evelyn said coolly. She then turned her attention to the receptionist. "And Brenda Mills, you've been with the company for 12 years. In that time, you filed 17 formal complaints against junior staff members, mostly women and people of color, for infractions ranging from inappropriate footwear to a general lack of deference. Meanwhile, your own security logs show you spend, on average, 4 hours and 17 minutes of your workday on social media and online shopping. You're not a gatekeeper, Brenda. You're a troll guarding a bridge to nowhere." Brenda's mouth fell open. The blood drained from her face, leaving her looking sallow under the harsh fluorescent lights. She felt exposed, violated. The lobby, once a stage for Rick's petty tyranny, now felt like a courtroom where they were all on trial. The 5 minutes Evelyn had mentioned were ticking away. 2 were already gone. Rick, realizing that his usual tactics of intimidation were useless, tried to pivot. He forced a strained, greasy smile. "All right, look. Clearly there's been a misunderstanding. You're from the Ethereum transition team. I get it. You're here to shake things up. We respect that. Why don't we start over? I'm Rick Peterson. Let's go to my office. We can have a coffee, and I can walk you through the real situation with Project Odyssey." He extended a hand, the picture of magnanimity. Evelyn looked at his outstretched hand and then back at his face, her expression one of utter disdain. "The time for a conversation, Richard, was when you thought I was a delivery person. It was when you thought I was a diversity hire. You had a chance to show me what kind of leader you were. Instead, you showed me what kind of a man you are, and based on that, I've concluded that you are not a leader at all. You're a liability." Just then, the main elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and a flustered-looking man in a tailored suit hurried out. He was Robert Vance, the regional director for the East Coast, the highest-ranking executive in the Boston office. He was a holdover from the pre-acquisition days, a man Evelyn was still evaluating. His face was slick with sweat. "Dr. Reed," he exclaimed, his voice tight with panic. He rushed toward Evelyn, pointedly ignoring Rick and the others. "I just got your text. I am so sorry. I was in a meeting downstairs. I didn't realize you were arriving today. We would have rolled out the red carpet for you." The lobby fell into a silence so profound it was almost deafening. The only sound was the faint hum of the building's HVAC system. Dr. Reed. The name, the title, hung in the air like a guillotine. Brenda's hands began to shake. She gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. Rick's face cycled through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally abject horror. His extended hand dropped to his side as if it had been burned. Mark and Steve looked at each other, their eyes wide with the terror of men who suddenly realized they were standing on a trap door and had just heard the lever being pulled. The red carpet, Robert," Rick stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. "What are you talking about? Who is this?" Robert Vance shot him a look of pure, unadulterated pity. "Who is this?" he repeated, his voice incredulous. "Rick, this is Dr. Evelyn Reed. She's the founder and CEO of Ethereum Dynamics. She's the woman who signed your paychecks 3 weeks ago. She's your boss." The word boss struck Rick like a physical blow. He staggered back a step, his mind reeling. He replayed the last 10 minutes in his head. Wait outside. Sweetheart. Coffee delivery service. Diversity hire. Every casual insult, every condescending remark was now a nail in his professional coffin. He had just told the billionaire owner of the entire company to wait by the service elevators. Evelyn watched him, her expression unreadable. She had seen this moment before, in different forms. The sudden, nauseating realization on a person's face when they understand the power dynamic has irrevocably, catastrophically shifted against them. She took no pleasure in it. It was simply a necessary, if unpleasant, part of business. "Robert," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through Rick's spiral of despair. "Thank you for coming up. Your timing is perfect. Your 5 minutes are up, Richard." She turned her full attention to the 3 men. "Mark Calloway, Stephen Pierce, you are fired. Your access has been revoked. Security will escort you to your desks to collect your personal belongings, and then you will be escorted from the building." She then looked at Rick, whose face had turned a blotchy, mottled red. "Richard Peterson, you are also fired. For that reason. For gross mismanagement of Project Odyssey, for falsifying progress reports, and for creating a hostile and unprofessional work environment. You will not be receiving a severance package. I would advise you to have your lawyer review the non-compete clause in the new Ethereum employment contract you signed last week. It is, I assure you, ironclad." Finally, she looked over at the reception desk, at Brenda, who was now openly trembling, tears welling in her eyes. "Brenda," Evelyn said, her voice softening just a fraction, a surgeon showing a moment of pity for the tissue she must exercise. "Your position is redundant. You are terminated, effective immediately. Pack your things." She had done it. In less than 15 minutes, she had walked into her new building and decapitated its most problematic team. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about surgery. The cancer of this toxic culture was aggressive, and she had to cut deep to save the patient. Robert Vance stood by, looking stunned but saying nothing. He knew better than to question a decision made with such swift and brutal finality. Rick, however, found one last gasp of his old arrogance. "You can't do this," he snarled, a cornered animal. "The whole team, the project will collapse. You'll be nothing without us. I'll sue. I'll sue you and this whole damn company." Evelyn simply raised an eyebrow. "Your team, Richard, was the anchor weighing this company down. Now it's gone. As for your lawsuit, feel free. My legal department is led by Daniel Shapiro at Morgan & Sterling. I'm sure they'd be delighted to discuss the matter with you during discovery, especially when we subpoena the unedited project data you tried to wipe from the servers last night." That was the final blow. Rick deflated completely, the fight draining out of him, replaced by the hollow emptiness of defeat. He had been so thoroughly, so completely outplayed. Evelyn turned to Robert Vance. Robert, please have security handle this. And then, I want you to assemble every remaining employee in the main conference room in 30 minutes. It's time I properly introduced myself. The silence that followed Rick's final, empty threat was heavier than any shouting match. It was the silence of a world irrevocably changed. Two uniformed security guards, a man and a woman who had been discreetly summoned by Robert Vance, appeared as if from nowhere. Their presence was professional and imposing, making the firing starkly official. Brenda was the first to break. A sob escaped her lips as she began clumsily pulling personal trinkets from her desk. A framed photo of a cat, a garish mug, a collection of novelty pens. She didn't look at anyone, her face a mask of humiliation. Rick, Mark, and Steve stood frozen for a moment longer, a tableau of broken pride. Mark, the lanky one, seemed to shrink into himself. Steve stared at the floor, his face grim. But Rick, even in defeat, had a flicker of defiance in his eyes, not of power, but of pure, undiluted hate. It was a look Evelyn recognized. It was the look of a man who would blame anyone but himself for his own downfall. He shot a venomous glare at Evelyn before turning to follow the security guard toward the elevators. Evelyn watched them go, not with triumph, but with a clinical sense of closure. This was an amputation. It was painful, it was messy, but it was necessary to prevent the gangrene of their attitudes from spreading. Dr. Reed, Robert Vance said, his voice still shaky, the main conference room is being prepared. Is there anything you need? Yes, Robert, she replied, her tone shifting seamlessly back to that of a CEO. I need a full, unredacted list of all employees in this branch, their roles, their performance reviews for the last 2 years, and any and all internal complaints or commendations associated with them. And I need a real-time diagnostic of every active project, not the doctored summaries Rick Peterson has been feeding you. Of course, right away, he stammered, already typing into his phone, eager to prove his usefulness. One more thing, Robert, Evelyn added, stopping him. Your name was on the approval signatures for Rick's last 3 budget extensions for Project Odyssey, despite the clear lack of progress. You let this happen under your watch. The reason you're not clearing out your desk alongside them is because I haven't decided if your incompetence is better or worse than their malice. Your performance over the next 30 days will determine your future with this company. Am I clear? Vance swallowed hard, the color draining from his face. Crystal clear, Dr. Reed. He scurried off, a man who had just been handed a stay of execution and knew it. 30 minutes later, Evelyn stood before the remaining employees of Innovate Forward's Boston office. About 60 people sat in the large conference room, a space designed to hold twice that many. The empty chairs were ghosts of their former colleagues. The mood was a cocktail of fear, confusion, and a strange, unacknowledged flicker of relief. Everyone knew Rick's team. Everyone knew what they were like. Evelyn stood at the front of the room, not behind the podium, but in front of it, creating a direct line to her new employees. She was still in her jeans and cashmere sweater, an outfit that now seemed less like a disguise and more like a statement. She was not a suit. She was a builder. Good morning, she began, her voice filling the silent room. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Evelyn Reed, and I am the CEO of Ethereum Dynamics. I apologize for the abrupt nature of my introduction today. She paused, letting her eyes scan the faces in front of her. She saw anxiety, but also curiosity. I'm not going to stand here and give you a typical corporate speech about synergy and leveraging assets. You can read that on our website. I'm here to talk about reality. The reality is that Ethereum Dynamics bought this company for its potential, not for its recent performance. The reality is that this branch has been underperforming for years. It has been stifled by a culture that rewarded cronyism over competence and arrogance over innovation. She began to pace slowly in front of them. I came here today unannounced because I wanted to see the truth, and I saw it in the first 10 minutes I was in the building. I saw a culture where people were judged on their appearance before they were judged on their ideas, a culture where bullying was mistaken for leadership, and where mediocrity was protected by a wall of bravado. The people who were let go today were not fired because of a personal insult to me. Let me be very clear about that. An insult is just words. I was not fired. They were terminated because they were symptoms of a disease that was killing this company. They were cancerous and I believe in aggressive treatment. A murmur went through the crowd. This was unlike any corporate address they had ever heard. It was raw, direct, and brutally honest. Now let's talk about the future, she continued, her tone shifting from surgical to visionary. Some of you are probably scared right now. You're wondering if more cuts are coming. You're wondering what Ethereum wants from you. I'll tell you what I want. I want your ideas. I want your passion. I want the brilliant work you were hired to do, but were never empowered to accomplish. She stopped in the center of the room. Look around. The people who made your jobs harder, who took credit for your work, who made you dread coming into the office on Monday morning, they are gone. The roadblock has been removed. What's left is an opportunity. Over the next week, my senior team from Ethereum will be here. We are going to conduct a full operational review. But this isn't a witch hunt. This is a talent search. We are going to talk to every single one of you. We want to know what projects you're excited about. We want to know what's broken and how you would fix it. The old hierarchy of this office is officially dissolved as of this moment. From now on, the only thing that matters is the quality of your work and the strength of your ideas. She pointed to a young woman in the second row. You, what's your name? The woman, startled, stammered. Sarah Jenkins. I'm a junior data analyst. Sarah Jenkins, Evelyn said with a smile. What is the single most inefficient process you have to deal with every day? Sarah blinked, stunned. The data warehousing query system. It's ancient. It takes 45 minutes to run a report that should take 3. And how would you fix it? Evelyn pressed. Well, we have a license for a much better cloud-based platform, but Rick's team never approved the integration. They said it wasn't a priority. I actually mapped out a migration plan for it as a pet project. Evelyn beamed. Excellent. Find me after this meeting. I want to see that plan. If it's solid, you're leading the migration project. Starting tomorrow. Sarah's jaw dropped. A buzz of excitement rippled through the room. The fear was beginning to be replaced by something else. Hope. For the next hour, Evelyn didn't lecture. She listened. She went around the room asking people their names, what they did, what frustrated them, and what they dreamed of building. She found pockets of brilliance and passion that had been buried under layers of mismanagement. A quiet engineer who had a revolutionary idea for code optimization. A marketing assistant who had a brilliant strategy for rebranding their outdated software. When she was done, the entire energy of the room had transformed. It was electric. She had walked into a morgue and managed to find a pulse. This is the new Innovate Forward, she concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. A place of meritocracy, transparency, and relentless innovation. The past is over. Your real work starts now. Welcome to Ethereum Dynamics. As she walked out of the conference room, leaving a stunned but energized workforce in her wake, she felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The purge had been successful. The promise had been made. Now came the hard part, rebuilding. But she was confident. She had faced down worse odds and built an empire. Rebuilding one broken office would be a challenge, but one she was more than ready for. She didn't know yet that the cancer she thought she had removed had already metastasized, and the real fight for the soul of her new company had only just begun. Rick Peterson, sitting in his car in the parking garage, was already on the phone with a lawyer, and he wasn't just planning to sue, he was planning to burn her entire world to the ground. In the weeks following what the Boston office staff had dubbed the reckoning, a palpable new energy surged through the halls of Innovate Forward. The oppressive cloud of Rick Peterson's regime had lifted. Collaboration replaced fear. Hallway conversations were animated with ideas, not gossip. Sarah Jenkins, the junior data analyst, was flourishing in her new role leading the data migration, proving to be a natural and inspiring leader. Evelyn's gambit seemed to be paying off spectacularly. She had made several trips back to Boston, overseeing the restructuring and promoting talented individuals who had been sidelined for years. The Odyssey project was officially scrapped, its bloated code and flawed premise a relic of the old guard. Evelyn felt vindicated. Her decisive, if brutal, action had been the correct one. The business was already seeing the benefits, with efficiency metrics ticking upward for the first time in 3 years. She had been hailed within Ethereum's board as a visionary, a leader unafraid to make the hard calls. The first sign of trouble was a whisper, a small article that appeared on a niche but respected tech industry blog called Binary Beat. The headline was provocative: woke washing or corporate overreach. Ethereum CEO Dr. Evelyn Reed fires veteran team amidst controversy. The article, written by a journalist named Julian Vance, no relation to Robert, framed the story in a wildly different light. It painted Richard Peterson as a dedicated 22-year veteran of the company, a loyal soldier unceremoniously executed by the new corporate overlords. It quoted anonymous sources, clearly Mark and Steve, who described Dr. Reed as an arrogant and hostile executive who came in with an agenda. The central event was twisted maliciously. It claimed Evelyn had shown up dressed inappropriately for a corporate environment, refused to identify herself, and became enraged when the team, in the middle of a high-pressure deadline, asked her to wait. The article conveniently omitted the slurs about coffee delivery and diversity hires, instead spinning Rick's actions as a reasonable response to an unknown and disruptive individual. The most venomous part was the undertone. It hinted that Rick, a white man in his 50s, was a victim of a diversity-obsessed corporate culture, a casualty of a power-tripping black CEO. The article was insidious, a carefully crafted piece of character assassination designed to appeal to a certain resentful corner of the internet. Evelyn read it in her San Francisco office, her stomach tightening into a cold knot. It was a complete distortion of the truth, yet it was skillfully written, full of plausible-sounding corporate jargon and quotes that, while misleading, were not technically lies. Her head of PR, a sharp woman named Alani, was already in her office. "We can kill this," Alani said confidently. "Issue a strong denial, a no comment on internal employee matters, and it'll blow over. It's a small blog." "Don't underestimate a small fire, Alani," Evelyn warned. "They can spread." She was right. Within 48 hours, the story had been picked up by larger, more partisan outlets. The narrative was crystallizing. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the celebrated genius, was actually a ruthless tyrant who had callously fired a loyal team of hardworking men. The comments sections were a cesspool of racism and misogyny. Her name, once synonymous with innovation, was now being dragged through the digital mud. Then came the second blow. A formal letter from a prestigious Boston law firm, Thornton & Crowe, arrived via courier. Richard Peterson was suing her, Ethereum Dynamics, and Robert Vance for wrongful termination, age discrimination, racial discrimination, and defamation of character. He was seeking an astronomical sum in damages. "This is absurd," Evelyn fumed to her legal counsel Daniel Shapiro. "He has no case. He was fired for cause for gross incompetence." "He's not trying to win in court, Evelyn," Daniel said grimly over a video call. "He's trying to win in the court of public opinion. This is a PR lawsuit. He wants to make this so messy and so public that you'll be forced to settle for a massive sum just to make him go away. He's using your identity as a weapon against you, twisting a narrative of you righting a wrong into one of you being an angry black woman on a power trip." The injustice of it was galling. She had spent her entire career being twice as good, twice as smart, just to get half the recognition. Now, the one time she had wielded her power to clean up a mess, that very power was being used to paint her as a villain. But the serpent's whisper was just a distraction from its venomous bite. The real attack was yet to come. It started on a Thursday afternoon. The newly migrated data warehouse, Sarah Jenkins' pride and joy, suddenly crashed. Not just a slowdown, but a catastrophic, system-wide failure. The entire logistics backbone for Innovate Forward's remaining clients went dark. Panic erupted in the Boston office. Sarah and her new team worked frantically, but the problem was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The code was a labyrinth of inexplicable errors. It was as if the system was actively fighting them, rewriting and corrupting data as they tried to fix it. By Friday, the problem had spread. The virus, for they now knew it was a malicious attack, had somehow bridged the firewall and was now infecting Ethereum's primary network. It wasn't just Innovate Forward that was in trouble. The core operations of Evelyn's entire empire were at risk. Evelyn convened a crisis meeting with her top cybersecurity engineers in San Francisco. They were the best in the world, hackers she'd hired and paid handsomely to protect her fortress. They were pale and sleep-deprived. "It's a logic bomb," said a young prodigy named Kenji, a highly sophisticated one. It was embedded deep within the legacy code of Project Odyssey. It was designed to trigger if specific system calls related to that project were not made for 30 consecutive days. "When you scrapped the project, we started the countdown on our own destruction," Evelyn finished, the blood draining from her face. "That's not the worst part," Kenji continued, pulling up lines of code on the main screen. "This isn't just a bomb, it's a parasite. It's not just destroying data, it's copying it. It's been quietly exfiltrating proprietary client data, source code, everything for the last 72 hours. And it's routing it through a complex web of encrypted servers. We can't trace the final destination." This was no longer about a bad news story or a frivolous lawsuit. This was corporate espionage on a scale that could bankrupt them. Richard Peterson hadn't just been incompetent. He had been a saboteur. He, or someone on his team, had planted a poison pill deep inside the company, a dead man's switch designed to burn the whole place down if they were ever removed. Evelyn stared at the screen, the cascading lines of nonsensical code, a digital representation of her nightmare. The lawsuit was a smokescreen. The bad press was a diversion. The real attack was happening right now, in the heart of her servers. Rick Peterson hadn't just been fired. He had become a ghost in her machine, a vengeful phantom intent on tearing down everything she had ever built. The hard karma she had dealt him was now boomeranging back, not as a whisper, but as a hurricane, and she was standing directly in its path. The weekend was a blur of caffeine and crisis. Evelyn practically lived in the Ethereum command center, a glass-walled room known internally as the war room. Whiteboards were covered in frantic diagrams of network architecture and cryptographic pathways. The world's best cybersecurity team, her digital Praetorian Guard, fought a desperate battle against an enemy they couldn't see. The logic bomb, which they nicknamed Cerberus, was diabolically brilliant. It wasn't a brute force attack. It was elegant, insidious, and deeply integrated into the oldest, most obscure parts of Innovate Forward's legacy system. A digital snake pit no one had dared to clean out for fear of breaking decades-old code. Peterson's team had been the only ones who understood that archaic system. They had weaponized their own institutional knowledge. By Sunday morning, the situation was dire. Major clients were reporting service outages. Ethereum's stock was projected to plummet when the markets opened on Monday. The data exfiltration was ongoing. They had managed to slow it, but not stop it. Every minute, terabytes of their most valuable secrets were bleeding out into the ether. "He had to have help," Kenji said, his eyes red-rimmed from staring at code for 48 straight hours. "Rick Peterson is a blowhard manager, not a sophisticated coder. The architecture of this malware, it's genius in a terrifying way. There was someone on his team, someone brilliant who built this." Evelyn's mind raced through the files of the terminated employees. Mark and Steve. They were sycophants, followers, not architects of this level of digital devastation. Who else was on that team? There were about a dozen of them, mostly mid-level coders who had ridden Peterson's coattails for years. Meanwhile, the public relations crisis was escalating. Julian Vance, the Binary Beat journalist, had published a follow-up piece. This time he had a direct quote from Richard Peterson's lawyer. "Mr. Peterson is devastated to hear about the technical difficulties at his former company," the statement read. "He and his highly skilled team managed that complex system flawlessly for over 2 decades. Perhaps if the new ownership had valued their experience instead of callously discarding it for appearances, these unfortunate and predictable system failures would not be occurring." The insinuation was clear and devastatingly effective. It made Peterson look like a spurned prophet and Evelyn like an incompetent fool who had broken her new toy. The narrative was spinning out of her control. Her board members were calling, their voices thick with panic. Her investors were demanding answers. She was under siege, fighting a war on 2 fronts, one digital, one public. "We need to go on the offensive," Alani, her PR head, urged. "We have to tell them we're under attack. Blame Peterson." "And say what?" Daniel Shapiro, her lawyer, countered the conference speaker. "That we have a hunch he's behind a crippling cyber attack? He'll sue us for defamation on top of everything else. We have no concrete proof linking him to Cerberus. It's all circumstantial. The man is a snake, but he's a clever snake. Evelyn felt the walls closing in. She had built her reputation on being in control, on seeing the patterns no one else could. Now she was completely reactive, plugging leaks in a dam that was about to burst. Her swift, decisive action in Boston, which had felt so righteous and necessary, now seemed like a catastrophic blunder. She had kicked a hornet's nest, not realizing it was rigged with explosives. In a moment of desperation, she retreated to her office, needing a moment of quiet away from the frantic energy of the war room. She pulled up the complete personnel files from the Boston office, not just of the fired team, but of everyone. She needed a different perspective, a detail she had missed. She scrolled through the files, past the sycophantic reviews of Mark and Steve, past the glowing but clearly fabricated self-assessments from Peterson. She went deeper, looking at the junior members of his team, the ones who were just collateral damage in the firing. Most were unremarkable. Then she landed on one file. His name was David Smith, a senior software engineer, 32 years old. His photo showed a quiet, serious-looking man with glasses. He had been with Innovate Forward for 6 years. His performance reviews were a strange paradox. His technical assessments were off the charts. Peer reviews consistently called him the smartest guy in the room and the only one who truly understands the legacy backend. He had received maximum bonuses for technical proficiency year after year. But his manager's assessment, written by Richard Peterson, told a different story. David is a capable coder, but lacks the necessary communication and leadership skills for advancement. He is not a team player. He is resistant to collaborative approaches and often works in isolation, fails to see the bigger picture. He had been passed over for promotion 4 times. Evelyn scrolled down to the comments section. A junior HR rep had flagged something 2 years ago. David Smith filed a formal protest regarding the Odyssey project architecture. He submitted a 30-page document detailing critical security vulnerabilities and structural flaws. The protest was dismissed by R. Peterson as sour grapes for not being chosen to lead the project. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She searched the archives and found the protest document. It was dense, technical, and brilliant. It not only predicted the potential for catastrophic failure, but also outlined with chilling accuracy how a malicious actor could exploit the very vulnerabilities he had identified. He hadn't just warned them about a potential fire, he had handed them the arsonist's blueprint, and they had ignored him. Rick had fired him along with everyone else. This was the guy. David Smith wasn't the saboteur. He was the one who tried to stop it. He was the brilliant mind behind the curtain, the one whose work Peterson had likely stolen and twisted for his own purposes. Cerberus wasn't built by Peterson. It was likely a perversion of Smith's own defensive protocols, a weapon made from a shield. But why would he help her now? She had fired him. To him, she wasn't a savior. She was just the final person in a long line of executives who had overlooked his talent and discarded him. He was probably sitting at home right now, watching her company burn, feeling a grim sense of vindication. Evelyn knew what she had to do. It was a long shot, a move born of pure desperation. It would require her to do something she rarely did, admit she was wrong, and ask for help. She looked at the contact information in his file. It listed a personal cell phone number. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up her own phone. Swallowing her pride, a lump in her throat that felt as heavy as lead, she dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. She was about to hang up when a quiet, cautious voice answered. "Hello? Mr. Smith? David Smith?" Evelyn said, her own voice sounding foreign to her. "My name is Evelyn Reed. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I am in desperate trouble. I was wrong to fire you, and I believe you are the only person in the world who can help save my company." Evelyn retreated to her office, away from the frantic energy of the war room. Desperate for a detail she had missed, she pulled up the complete personnel files from the Boston office. She scrolled past the sycophants and cronies until one file stopped her cold. David Smith, a senior software engineer. His technical assessments were flawless, with peers calling him the smartest guy in the room. Yet Richard Peterson's reviews were dismissive. labeling him not a team player and passing him over for promotion 4 times. Then Evelyn saw it. A formal protest David had filed 2 years ago regarding the Odyssey project. The 30-page document he'd submitted detailed the exact security vulnerabilities that were now being used to destroy her company. He hadn't just warned them about a fire, he had given them the arsonist's blueprint. They had ignored him, and then she had fired him. He wasn't part of the problem, he was the one person who had tried to stop it. Swallowing a lump of pride that felt as heavy as lead, she dialed his personal number. After 3 tense rings, a quiet, cautious voice answered. "Mr. Smith? My name is Evelyn Reed," she began, her own voice unsteady. "I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I was wrong to fire you, and I believe you are the only person who can save my company." The silence on the other end was heavy. "An apology from a CEO," he finally said, his tone dry and bitter. "That's a collector's item. What do you want, Dr. Reed?" She laid it all bare: the attack, the data theft, the imminent collapse. She offered him a $250,000 signing bonus and an exorbitant daily consulting fee. Cerberus, David said with a sigh of weary resignation. So he actually did it. He explained that the attack was a twisted perversion of a defensive system he had designed years ago, the Guardian Protocol. Peterson, unable to understand it, had ordered it shelved, only to steal the code and weaponize it. "Why should I help you?" David asked, his voice sharp with the sting of years of disrespect. "You lumped me in with the very people I fought against. You fired me without a second thought." The question was fair, and Evelyn knew only the honest truth would suffice. "You shouldn't," she admitted softly. "You have every right to hang up and watch us burn. But I'm not asking you to help me. I'm asking you to help the other employees, the ones like Sarah Jenkins who are finally getting a chance to build something. Peterson didn't just betray me, he turned your art into a weapon. Don't let him win." After a long pause, she heard the clicking of a keyboard. "The encryption is a trap," David said, his voice suddenly all business. "The key is hidden in the junk code. Peterson's ego is the real vulnerability." He didn't need the system credentials Evelyn offered. "I built the damn house," he said. "Did you really think I wouldn't keep a key?" Moments later, a new user, D. Chen, appeared on their system monitors. He moved through their defenses with a speed and grace that left her world-class cybersecurity team in awe. The ghost had returned to reclaim his machine. With the FBI preparing to raid the Delaware server farm, where the stolen data was being sent, David revealed his true plan. It wasn't enough to defend, they would attack. "We're going to use my Guardian Protocol's retaliation feature," he announced to the stunned war room. "It's a Trojan horse. It will not only delete our stolen data from his server, but it will also copy everything on it, every email, every file, and send it directly to the FBI. It was a digital judo move, using the attacker's own momentum to defeat him. As the FBI team moved in, David launched the counterstrike. On the main screen, they watched the Trojan horse activate. A new data stream appeared, a torrent of files flowing out of Peterson's server and into their custody. The files were a smoking gun. There were emails meticulously planning the conspiracy between Rick, Mark, and Steve. There were contracts with a PR firm hired to slander Evelyn. Most damningly, there were communications with one of Ethereum's fiercest competitors. Rick hadn't just been seeking revenge. He was committing high-stakes corporate treason. At that exact moment, Evelyn's lawyer, Daniel Shapiro, got the call. "They're in," the FBI contact said. "We have Peterson, Calloway, and Pierce. They were in the building, watching the data download." They had caught the entire conspiracy, red-handed. The public narrative flipped overnight. Richard Peterson, facing incontrovertible evidence, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His finances were ruined, his reputation destroyed. He became a cautionary tale of hubris and hate. Brenda, the receptionist, found her reputation toxic, her career reduced to a retail job, a bitter footnote to the saga. The next day, Evelyn flew to Boston and met David in a coffee shop. She didn't just thank him, she offered him the role of Chief Technology Officer for the entire Innovate Forward division, reporting directly to her. David accepted on 2 conditions. First, he wanted to promote Sarah Jenkins to be his Director of Implementation. Second, He wanted to fund an internal R&D lab, a place where any employee's idea could be heard. No more brilliant minds buried by bad managers, he stated. Evelyn smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. Welcome aboard, Mr. Smith. She had learned the most valuable lesson of her career. True power wasn't just the strength to cut things down, but the wisdom to see what was worth building and the humility to empower the silent geniuses you almost threw away. This story is a powerful reminder that prejudice and arrogance, no matter how entrenched, can be shattered by integrity and power used wisely. Dr. Evelyn Reed's initial brutal decision set off a chain reaction, but it was her ability to admit her mistake and empower the right person, David Smith, that truly saved her empire. The hard karma that came back wasn't just for her, it was a test of her leadership. She proved that true strength isn't about never falling, it's about how you rise and who you choose to lift up with you. The villains of this story weren't just defeated, their own malice was the instrument of their downfall, a perfect and satisfying real-world karma. If this story of justice, intellect, and the epic consequences of underestimating someone resonated with you, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We have so many more stories like this to share. What did you think of Evelyn's actions? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one.